Welcome to Innovate State. Appreciate you all being here this evening. Really excited for tonight's conversation. I think you're in for a real treat. My name is Chris Sell. I'm with the Burgess Institute for Entrepreneurship Innovation here at Michigan State University. I welcome all of you here in the room and welcome all of those Spartans across the globe tuning in for tonight's live stream to tonight's Innovate State conversation featuring alumnus and serial entrepreneur Hal Widlansky. Before I get to Hal's intro, just want to give you a few commercials for upcoming programs or initiatives or opportunities I want to make sure everyone's aware of. So, two-day venture. Anyone here in the room, show of hands, done two-day venture before here at Michigan State? A few folks. Excellent, excellent. So we just hosted one of our two-day venture programs this past week, and we've got another one coming up March 22nd and 23rd. As my colleague Ken Swiziak likes to say, it's pick-up basketball for entrepreneurs. And so it's an opportunity for students to come together, form teams, and work on a solution to a problem or an idea to take to market. You get to work over 36 hours, pitch that idea to a panel of judges, maybe get a $500 grant, and in the meantime, learn a ton. It's super fun. I think those that have done it will say and affirm that it's one of the coolest things they get to do as part of our program here at Michigan State. Highly recommend it. So if you're interested, it is an opportunity you can learn more about and register for online. Just go to eship.msu.edu. Go to the events tab, you'll find two-day venture listed right there. All the details can be found there. Also, Momentum. I don't know if we have any Momentum folks here in the room from previous cohorts. Excellent. So Momentum is a 6-week pre-accelerator program. So if you're working on a venture, a startup of your own, and you'd like to one day get into Y Combinator or Techstars or iCore or some other nationally renowned accelerator program, we offer something called Momentum. It's a 6-week intensive curriculum where we give 5 teams, $5,000 grant to keep you here in East Lansing for 6 weeks over the summer. And we'll put you through a really cool curriculum, mentors, activities, maybe a trip to Chicago to connect with founders and alums and investors to really help you take your business to the next level and get you ready and positioned for entry into really cool things like YC. So if you're interested in that, again, learn more about it. Go to eship.msu.edu/momentum. You can find all the details there. Lastly, I want to give a plug for the Burgess Adventure Challenge. We've got that coming up April 4th. That is MSU's premier pitch competition for students. Think Shark Tank, think all the things. It's a really cool program to interact with and connect with a lot of the top student venture teams on our campus. Again, that's Thursday, April 4th, taking place at the Kellogg Center. You can register now and claim your free ticket as we speak. On March 12th, we're going to be celebrating something called Give Green Day. So just save the date. It's a day you're going to be learning more about over the next few weeks where MSU celebrates all things Michigan State and our students. And we ask folks to consider making donations online, kind of like a crowd power project, crowdfunding for things that are really important to us to help students succeed at Michigan State. So you're going to hear more about it. Just want to make sure that those of you in the room and those of you watching online are saving the date for Give Green Day here at Michigan State this spring. So tonight, I'm really pleased and honored and excited to introduce to you Hal Widlansky, our featured guest this evening. Hal comes to us sort of from Michigan, sort of from Salt Lake City, sort of from LA. He'll get to that here in a little bit. I first met Hal on Zoom during the pandemic 4-ish years ago when he offered to help moderate and host a virtual alumni reception, because we were doing everything virtual at that time, for Spartans in the Mountain West. Because at that time he was firmly a resident of Salt Lake City. And it was a delight meeting him then, and ever since then we've had a continued conversation about ways that he can continue giving back to our program. He's become a guest lecturer extraordinaire, guest lecturing today and tomorrow. He's done it in years past, in semesters past. Also was a lunch and learn speaker earlier today at the Hatch. Hal is probably one of the best examples I can think of who's carved out a career, in his words, that kind of lies at the intersection of technology and communication and technology, innovation, and business. And I think what he'll be able to talk to you about today is this neat story where you might come to MSU thinking you're going to go to med school and then major in communication arts and sciences, and then tell people 20 years later that your most impactful class was Theater 101 and how performing arts comes to fruition in your everyday life as a founder, as an investor, as a fundraiser, as an executive. And it's just a real treat to have him back on campus. If you could all join me in welcoming Hal and my colleague Ken Swiziak to the stage.
Thanks, Chris. All right, I got the DJ mic tonight.
Oh, and I get the goodie bag.
Yeah, you got the
Excellent.
swag bag.
Excellent.
Hi, everybody. a lot of my students, Hal. It's kind of weird seeing you again. Yeah, it's
Well,
good.
I'll try not to embarrass you
It's all
too
right.
much.
It's all right. Thanks for joining us, man. It's gonna be fun.
I'm thrilled to be here.
So like Chris, I got the chance to meet Hal early 2020. I think I was on the same Zoom call, so it was a lot of fun. And since then, he's been back in Michigan, hanging around the program. So it's been a ton of fun having him here with us. I always start. All of our moderators for Innovate say have different styles, right?
Okay.
It's kind of like I probably consider like what podcast we watch is
Right.
probably how we do this. I always start with the question like, okay, not too long ago, you were an MSU student.
Not too long
right?
ago.
I like to think it wasn't that long ago. Feels
Not
like it
too
wasn't
long
that long
ago.
ago, right? What was your time like at State? How did you get here? One, like, because everybody's got like a unique story on like how they ended up at State, in my opinion.
Yeah. I know.
How'd you get here? What'd you do while you were here? And what was your most impactful like memory?
So like everything I think that's happened along my journey, coming to MSU was a complete and total accident. This is not where I intended to go to school. I have a younger brother who's 14 months younger, and my parents, with 2 kids going to school within 2 years, really wanted me to stay at home. And so I actually enrolled at U of M Dearborn. I've been accepted in Ann Arbor and as well as here, but if I went to Dearborn, I could stay at home. And I lasted 4 days, and I was just like, I got to get out of here. So I literally sold all my books back on a payphone from the union at U of M Dearborn, called MSU, reopened my admission, drove to East Lansing, and got housing and everything else. Then told my parents, oh, by the way, I'm going to East Lansing now. And so it was a total accident that I ended up here. It was a total accident that I ended up in Holmes Hall. And my parents, like I think a lot of parents, they said you can be anything you want as long as it's a doctor or a lawyer. And so I was pre-med, and I was in Lyman Briggs School. I think I had 14 different declared majors in 5 years of undergrad.
Yeah, good for you.
And I had a great time as an undergrad. My major was in telecommunications and media arts and comm arts sci, but I took classes sort of everywhere across the university as I was doing my pre-med curriculum. But I had a great time. I founded a fraternity here. I had a great time in Briggs. Anybody from Holmes Hall? Shout out to Holmes Hall.
All right,
Excellent.
a couple.
And then I went from there to med school, but I don't know how far down the road you want me to
So,
go.
yeah, so okay, let's go there, right? So although you weren't quite sure about med school, you got into med school.
Yeah, I
All right,
did.
yeah.
With my parents saying you can be anything you want, my focus was on getting into medical school. I didn't really think through what it was going to be like to get through medical school,
Right.
or what was on the other side.
Yeah.
And so when I got to medical school, I was pretty sure this was not where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
I went to the DO school here at State. I only applied to one school. I'm sort of Spartan through and through. And I went through 2.5 years of med school. I was pretty sure at the end of the first year I was in the wrong place. I was really sure at the end of my second year that I was in the wrong place. And it took me until halfway through my third year to tell my parents that I'd quit.
Yeah.
And then I went to grad school here.
Okay.
So I was here for 9 years.
What'd you do your grad school in?
So also in comm arts
In
sci.
comm arts sci, okay.
So I went home to tell my parents
You
that I,
got comm arts students in the room?
yeah, comm arts sci.
Okay.
Represent.
No? Oh, yeah. Not many, just a couple.
But yeah, I went home for Christmas break and I said, my parents, I said, I think you're gonna wanna sit down. I have 3 things I need to tell you. Thing 1, I just quit med school. Here's all my stuff. My younger brother was just starting medical school. I said, thing 2, I just got accepted into this graduate program in this internet thing that I have no idea if I could really explain it to you, and I have no idea if I'm ever gonna make any money.
Right.
And thing 3 is I was just cast to play Laertes in Hamlet at Michigan State. And they just said, oh God, is that it? Are we done now?
Keep going, right? Yeah.
But yeah, it was a great experience.
So tell us about theater, because I think theater is a really interesting spot, and it's something that's come up a lot here. In fact, like we have a improv for entrepreneurship class at MSU, which is kind of an interesting thing that we offer, by the way, if you guys are looking to figure this out. But I think it plays an extremely important role in like creating dynamic entrepreneurs. Like,
Yeah.
because we all, I don't know, it's not that we all put on a show, but understanding how to read audiences and respond and get people to interact with you. I think it's a really, or like, even from a leadership perspective, be able to like improv, right? And play along with what's happening.
Yeah.
I want to know how it played a role in your life and how it's not something a lot of students think about dabbling into, but like, were you always drawn to it? Or is it something you found when you were at State, or was it high school or way before? I'm just curious.
I discovered
I don't know this. Literally
like-
making this one up on the fly.
Like everything else, it was completely random. I was in my 3rd year of medical school, and I'd gotten very ill my first year, so my program, I extended it to 5 years, and so I had some flexibility, and it was block tuition, so you use however many classes you take, it's a fixed price. And I arranged my schedule so that I could take Theater 101, acting for non-majors, because I just wanted something fun. So while I was taking all these medical courses, I was also taking this theater class. And I always wanted to try it. I didn't really think of what it would do for me later in life, but it opened so many doors. The instructor for the course, a graduate student, ended up becoming one of my best friends, convinced me to then audition for a show at the Wharton Center. I was the only non-major that was cast, and I think I might still be the only medical student who acted in a show at the Wharton Center.
Claim to fame.
But it was great fun, and it gave me tools that, fast forward years later, I was asked by a boss who was like the global head of marketing for this big public company, what class I took in graduate school that, really prepared me for what I do today. And without hesitation, I said classical Shakespeare and tragedy. And he looked at me, this guy, MBA from Harvard, and he said, why? And I said, well, if I can convincingly deliver Shakespeare to an audience of 1,000 people, I can convince a boardroom of 12 people of anything.
Right, yeah.
And he just sort of paused and had to think about that for a minute.
Yeah, right.
Because I just sold him my company.
Right. It's like, wait, what did I just buy? I bought something from an actor. That's cool though, but I do think it's really important for students to think about. I always think about like the classes you remember are not the ones you think you're going to remember.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so
Absolutely.
go take weird classes if you're not, even though your parents might get mad at you.
Yeah.
Probably not basketball too. That doesn't play out really well for people. I did that. It's not a good way.
I disagree. I took billiards. I took
Billiards is way more interesting.
Billiards is
now.
way more fun.
Yeah. All right. So you come through Michigan State. You get this. You get your grad degree in this internet thing in comm arts. What year is that?
So I have
Sorry.
to say.
Yeah. Well, I want to timestamp this so we can talk about like the rise of the internet.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
so 1996, I was working on my thesis, and I got recruited to a .com startup.
Yeah.
I did not finish my thesis, so I spent 9 years in East Lansing, and I have 1 degree.
Yeah. You tried a lot of things.
Yeah. I just tell people I'm very overeducated.
Yeah. Just without the diploma. So you ended up going to City Search, right?
Yeah. So I was doing research for my thesis, and my idea was to create this online sort of arts and entertainment guide. And I had actually had that idea as an undergrad in a telecom class. And I was doing research, and I found this company that was kind of doing the same thing. And I called them up, and I said, listen, can I talk to your head of product? I'd love to ask some questions. I'm this grad student from Michigan State.
Yeah.
They put me on the phone with one of the founders, and we talked for like 3.5 hours. And I started the conversation with, you have a great idea, but you're doing it all wrong. Not a good way if you're looking for a job to start a conversation. But by the end of the conversation, he said, well, when can you be in LA? And I said, well, if you're paying for the plane ticket, I can be there tomorrow. He said, go get a ticket. And I, got out my American Express card because there was no Expedia, and called the travel agent, and it was $1,600 for this plane ticket. Yeah. And so I called them back. I said, listen, the plane ticket's $1,600, and I don't have that kind of money. He said, I'll make you a deal. We'll pay for half of the ticket. The check will be here when you get here. If we make you an offer in writing, I'll give you the other half.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay. Bought this plane ticket on my credit card, not knowing how I'd pay for it. Flew to LA. I had an interview at 10 o'clock the next morning. I had an offer at 2 o'clock. I flew home, packed everything I owned, bought a brand new convertible, and drove to LA.
Right.
And that's how I ended up in California.
Tell us about City Search, though. I mean, you have to rewind. It's hard sometimes to imagine kind of what that was early internet at that point in time, right? Everyone was using dial-up. It was kind of like the first, if I remember it correctly. And I mean, so I was when you left, I was a freshman here.
Okay.
Oh no, I would have been in high school still. Never mind. Sorry, Hal. But nonetheless, I had dial-up internet at home.
Yeah.
And this was like when stuff was like starting to pop, and it was kind of like almost like a trip. Yeah, it was like how you would actually figure out what to do in cities if you went places, right?
So our moniker was
how to
get the most out of your city.
Yeah, how many employees when you got there?
45.
Okay, yeah,
and
so still pretty young.
When I left 30 months later, we were 1,500 and we were going public.
Yeah.
So it was like, Eric Schmidt famously said, like, when you get invited to take a ride on the rocket, don't worry about what seat you're in.
Yeah.
It was very much like that. It was go crazy. Raised a ton of money. They had already raised $30 million when I got there.
Yeah.
And so it was like, how fast can we go?
Yeah.
And it was an absolute adventure. It was sort of like this intersection of Yelp with like getting event tickets and movie times and local news and doing it all for the first time over dial-up internet in some cases.
Yeah.
There were no mobile phones with apps and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Where'd you head after that? Like, what was your next adventure? At
Yeah.
this point in time, did this kind of give you an entrepreneurial spark? Was this like, was this the thing?
Yeah, when I got to City Search, it was a question of, do you know how to do that? Awesome, go do it.
Right.
I mean, I remember I'd been there like maybe 3 weeks, and I was sitting in a meeting, and we were talking about partnering with TV stations for marketing. And the CEO said, "So does anybody have any experience in TV?" And I was like looking to see if anybody raised their hand. Nobody raised their hand, so I went. Now, my entire experience in TV, I hope nobody from City Search is watching this because I don't think I ever told them, was I had taken a production class at MSU, and my capstone project for that class was producing a late night TV talk show like Letterman, 5 cameras in front of a live audience that I wrote and produced and directed with one of my classmates. That was my only experience in television.
Right. But you had more than anyone else on the team, though.
Exactly. So literally the next day after that meeting, I was on a plane to San Francisco to figure out how to do a $250,000 partnership with ABC Television.
Yeah.
Like all you had to do was say yes, and people expected you to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that was sort of became the theme of everything else I did after that.
Yeah.
We went public. I took a bunch of time off, and I got recruited to another .com startup in the Bay Area that ended up being acquired by DoubleClick, which was then acquired by Google. We developed really cool technology that kind of powers all the retargeting that is behind all the SEO and PPC stuff that people do now on the internet. This was 20 years ago.
Set the groundwork for that.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And then, so tell me, all right, so then you got into a lot of different things, investing.
Yeah, I did a bunch of stuff. But the key to the entrepreneurial spark that you were getting at, when I left City Search, the CEO of the company had been a mentor of mine, and I said, his name is Charles Kahn, one of the smartest guys I've ever worked with, and I said, "Listen, can I ask a favor?" And he said, "Yeah, anything." And I said, "Can I have an afternoon?" He said, "For what?" And I said, "Well, I want to learn how to get from my chair to your chair." Right? He was, in his mid-30s. He had been a partner in McKinsey, and then came and ran City Search and took it to an IPO. And I wanted to be a CEO someday.
Right.
And so he said, "Sure." And we sat in front of a 4x8 foot whiteboard for an afternoon, and he kind of mapped out for me what it was going to take. What are the pockets of knowledge that you need and the experiences that you need to have before someone will back you as a tech CEO.
Yeah.
And I made it my mission over the next 5 years to do those things.
Yeah.
And that's really where it started for me.
That's a really great piece of advice, though. I mean, is to look when you find someone who you like something you want to be, right? Just ask for advice, ask for help, right?
Yeah. In most cases, people are generous, I think, by nature.
Yeah.
And if you ask nicely and respectfully for something that is in their power to give you, most times they will.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learned doing venture capital years later is when you ask for money, you get advice.
Yeah.
And when you ask for advice, you get money.
Right.
So get good at asking for advice because you'll use that later to get money.
Right. No, it's a really good takeaway. So you dabbled in a lot of different things. Can you tell me, so you ended up being on the VC side of the equation, though. You ended up doing some investing.
I did.
Right? Yeah. When looking at from entrepreneurship from that side of the equation, anything you could share with our audience on kind of how deals work, thinking about like as an early stage investor, because then you ended up having to, you went back out and raise money again, but I'd love to get your experience from both sides of the equation, like what it was like to write checks and what it's like to raise money for ventures.
So after I sold the first company I was CEO of, we sold it to a big public company, and I went and worked for them for 3 years running a division, came back to Salt Lake after commuting to Seattle for 3 years, and joined an angel investment group, Salt Lake City Angels, and then I ran the group for.
Salt Lake City Angels the track record's crazy.
Track record's pretty good.
Yeah.
We invested in companies like Skull Candy and Stance and like companies that you've heard of.
Was High West part of your portfolio?
High West was part of our portfolio.
The whiskey guy, sorry.
Yeah, really good whiskey.
You want to see a really cool, but that like they exited before they even made their own product. Like that's how you do a business. It's pretty amazing.
No,
so if you want to look up a case study,
it was a fantastic, and their pitch was they gave us whiskey.
Yeah,
like that doesn't suck.
Yeah. Tastes good. Here's a check.
He's like, we're going to do a whiskey and chocolate pairing, and I'm like, oh, you had me at hello.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, it was a really interesting education because I had only ever been on the entrepreneur side. And I had no formal training in finance or accounting. Everything I learned, I kind of learned on the fly.
Yeah.
I learned about term sheets by trying to get one.
Right.
And so then I was on the other side learning how to write one.
Right.
And joining that group, again, great mentors who were a few yards down the road from me, ahead of me on the trail, sort of mentoring me and learning how to do that. And you learn what to look for. Is this a product that has a market beyond this city or beyond this state or beyond this country. In tech, the question you ask is this a feature, is this a product, or is this a company?
Right.
And those are all different. And some of them could grow up and become companies. And so you start to learn what to look for in a product or in an entrepreneur that resonates with you and that you want to back or you want to work with. And I did that for a few years.
Yeah. It's fun. I like getting people's like insights into how they look at deals, because I think it's kind of an interesting thing, because there's so many different. I always tell students, like, sometimes you put together your pro forma, your business plan, and you're looking at this, what seems like an insurmountable amount of funding needed, right? But the world's full of money. It's just a matter of getting in front of the right people and getting them to understand your vision and how you would deploy their capital and get money back to them, right?
Absolutely.
And it's how it works.
The goal is to make money. So, everything sort of is very formulaic in venture capital. So you just need to figure out, does your idea fit that formula or not?
Yeah, and it's okay if it doesn't.
It's
you
okay
don't
if
need
it
venture
doesn't.
capital
Absolutely.
for everything, right?
Absolutely.
And I know you've been involved in ventures that weren't venture-backed as well, right?
Ventures that were not venture-backed. I've been involved with ventures that took no outside financing whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I've been involved with companies that took lots of outside financing and then completely and spectacularly failed.
Yeah.
So raising money is not necessarily an indicator of whether you're not going to be successful in a big company. It's a matter of how strong is the idea, how badly does the entrepreneur want it, and what are the other conditions that are happening around the company that either help or is a headwind to the company.
Yeah. Can we talk about Surveo?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this was your last venture.
My most recent company.
Yep.
Spectacular failure.
3 years old.
Yep.
Spectacular
failure.
Okay.
3.5 years. So.
But rewind a year ago and.
We were on top of the world.
Top of the world. So can we walk us through the inception of this? What was the company? How did you come up with the idea?
Yeah.
And maybe the trajectory. That's why I love Hal, because he's like super brutally honest. So you can ask him any question about failure and how it
you learn
unfolds.
more from your failures than from your successes. I mean,
Yeah.
Bill Gates famously said he wishes he would have failed at some point.
Yeah.
Because thinking you can't fail is the worst place to be as an entrepreneur. If you don't have fear, you won't have that thing that drives you to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and still, pedal the bike as hard as you can.
Yeah. So tell us about the inception, though, because it's a really kind of clever idea that you and your co-founders had.
Yeah, it was a really fun idea.
Yeah.
So to rewind, before Surfeo, I had been running a travel technology company.
Yeah.
And as you might imagine, March, April of 2020,
kind of a bummer.
Not a great time to be in the travel space.
Yeah.
So the company furloughed or laid off, and I'd been hired 6 months before that as the chief operating officer. We went out and raised money, and then we laid off half the company.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I was going to do. My daughter was still in high school, and I was like, okay, how do we do this online school thing? I'm going to focus on keeping her on the rails to graduation. And oddly, the day after I left the company that I had been running, I got an email from a friend of mine that I'd known since CitySearch, so 20 plus years later. And we kept in touch over the years. Yeah. And I didn't know, but he had been running these Amazon brands. Creating cool products, finding someone who'll make it for him, and then bringing it to market. And my business partner's name is Mark Lewin, and he's a dear friend. And he's a really great sort of conceptual, there should be a product that does this, that's what he's really good at. What he's not great at is marketing and merchandising and making that product into a brand. So he sent me a press release from a company in New York that had raised $110 million to go out and buy these little digital native Amazon-centric brands. And the email just had one line. It said, we should go do this.
Okay.
And so I called him up and I said, who are we and what's this?
Yeah.
And he said, well, I've got these 5 or 6 brands. Here's what I came up with. And I was like, gosh, these suck.
Yeah.
But
can you give us some examples of like what these are? Like when you say digital-centric Amazon brands, I think we might have some ideas, but examples of products.
So he created a brand of darts, like darts that you throw in a bar, called Bullseye.
Yeah.
The marketing was horrible. The logo was terrible. But he trademarked the name Bullseye in the darts category.
That's a pretty good category to own, right?
I mean, how could you not be successful with that?
Yeah.
And so he had these really cool ideas. These are products that he. And
when you look for a random like commodity like product in Amazon, you see one that becomes like kind of bubbles up to the top, and you're like, I've never heard of this brand, but it looks like a real brand.
Exactly.
That's it, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So people, in 2016, Amazon opened their ecosystem to third-party sellers. So that meant somebody who was not Amazon could sell something on Amazon's marketplace.
Right.
And so people started creating these products, eventually sourcing stuff in China, having it made to spec, and then having it packaged and sent to the US. And so,
and then pay a bunch of ads to get to the top.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Mark had done this with a half a dozen products and had built a nice little lifestyle business, making 25, 30% net margins and not working very hard.
Yeah.
And his idea was, if we raised a bunch of money, we could buy some of these. And he's like, I know how to run the Amazon game. You know how to do digital performance marketing and raise money. We should go do this. That was his thesis.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, listen, I don't know anything about Amazon, but I have a lot of free time.
Yeah.
And
I'll figure it
so,
out.
so I was like, look, I'll figure it out. And I had just spent the last 5 years in the travel space, and turns out optimizing for ads on Airbnb and Expedia and Vrbo is not that different from optimizing for Amazon.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a business plan and built a financial model, and I took it to some of my friends in the investment community, and I said, listen, here's what I'm thinking about doing. Tell me if it's stupid, because right now we're doing it with our own money.
Yeah.
And all of my friends to a person said, this is a really good idea, how can I help?
Yeah.
And we said, well, we're gonna raise $1 million, and we're gonna go buy 2 companies and prove that the model works, and then we're gonna go raise a ton of money.
Yeah.
And we had a bunch of meetings. We ended up raising, we were oversubscribed, we raised $1.5 million. We bought 5 companies. We raised some debt. We ended up with Mark Cuban as one of our largest investors on the debt side. And we ended up with a portfolio of a dozen brands.
Yeah.
Smallest brand, as an example, was doing $100,000 in sales when we bought it. And we changed the packaging, changed the branding, tweaked the product. And last year that product sold $1.5 million. And we grew it 10x in 18 months. And that was the model.
Yeah.
And the problem was that we were doing this at the worst possible time to be raising capital.
Yeah.
We're just coming out of COVID, and we were starting to raise money right at the time that 2 things happened. One, Russia invaded Ukraine. Turns out not great for supply chain.
Yeah.
And 2, a bunch of other companies had raised a ton of money doing what we were doing. Our thesis was raise a little bit of money, road test the car, and then raise a bunch of money for rocket fuel to drive the car really fast. These guys did the opposite.
They raised rocket fuel.
They raised a ton of money,
and
they bought a ton of companies, and none of them hit their numbers.
Right.
And so
all of a sudden it cooled the.
Yeah, even though we were crushing it, we were hitting all of our metrics, we couldn't raise money because everyone was like stepping back from that segment.
Right.
So we pivoted. We sold off 3 of our brands so we'd have capital to invest in the remaining 9.
Yeah.
We ran the company on that money. We laid off half the company. Decided not to buy any more brands. We were just going to focus on what we had.
Right.
And Red Cedar Ventures was actually an investor in the company. We raised $1 million last year. And again, we got sort of hit with this like triple whammy. Like we built the model to withstand 1 or 2 hurricanes, and we got like 3 Category 5 storms hit all in 90 days.
Yeah.
We had a manufacturing issue, we had a product quality issue, and we had an investor pull out when we needed to pay for something.
Yeah.
And so I ended up with 5,000 units of a product sitting on a shipping dock in China that I couldn't pay for right before Christmas.
Yeah.
And ultimately it killed the company.
Yeah. When you can't pay for products, it's over. Right?
Yeah.
Basically. So, but, I mean, like, it's kind of a weird thing to say, but like,
Yeah.
the only thing that really stops a company is having no money in the bank account.
Yeah, and I tell this to entrepreneurs here all the time. I just said this afternoon. 99% of startups fail for one reason.
Yeah.
They run out of cash.
That's it.
If you can't figure out how to not just get to break even, but to cash flow positive on the money that you have, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And you got to build enough sort of wiggle room into your model to be able to do that. And it just didn't work out.
Yeah, you guys were living life. You were holding the tiger by the tail.
We weren't just on the edge. We were like over the edge and looking back to see, if we still had a toe on the ground.
Right. What was the lesson learned? Like, I mean, if you could, I mean, I know I've been playing hypotheticals, right? But like, we get a lot of students who come to us like, oh, I want to do a product. Products as companies themselves, it's a difficult game.
Yeah.
But it's hard because I think most of us watch Shark Tank or we see things like this, and it's like, there should be a product that does X.
Yep.
But products oftentimes make really hard companies. And it's a hard thing to say because like, one product makes a hard company. You can definitely develop a portfolio and you can have services that surround things and create an ecosystem. But like having, I don't know, can I name names of products? You guys had the brownie pan.
Yeah.
Right, which was a cool thing. Have you guys
Great
ever seen the
product.
brownie pan that only makes edges? Like it looks like an S?
Yeah.
That was one of theirs.
Yeah. It was
It was one of their portfolio
One of
products.
their products.
But like that's not probably its own company forever, right? Like there's only so many of those that can saturate a marketplace. Like,
Yeah. So
if you're a middle person, you're not going to buy the Edge Brownie.
yeah,
right?
you know,
Right?
there's no
No, but
accounting for taste.
I'm kind of curious, like what your thoughts are on, because I do have a lot of students who approach me and say, I want to sell a product on Amazon.
Yeah.
If you're in their shoes, what do you caution them? Like, what do you do to navigate that?
It's a good question. I mean, I think doing this as an outside investor-backed company, in retrospect, was really hard.
Yeah.
And it's really
The
hard.
demands are high.
The demands are high. You have to be good at a lot of things. I mean, we ran this company with 6 full-time employees, running 9 brands, and we were successful. We grew from 2 million to 4.2 million in 1 year.
Yeah.
The challenge was that we just couldn't keep up with demand. We had a product that was on QVC 2 weeks before we filed bankruptcy,
Right.
which was just insane, right?
Yeah.
We had demand was never the problem. Getting the right capital structure early enough and being able to focus, on the brands that were going to make the difference, and it's sort of like you got to fire people, hire slow, fire fast. Same way with products. You got to figure out quickly is this going to be a home run? Does it need to be a home run? Because if it's not, you're done.
Right.
And you move on to something else. You can't focus on 100 things. You can focus on 5.
And you can have death by growth, which
Yeah,
is a
absolutely.
weird, that's what you experience. basically,
Absolutely.
right? It's the weirdest thing to think about. But if your supply chains are built a certain way, if you have debt structures a certain way, if you have investor demands a certain way, you can outstrip your capacity to fulfill, orders and,
You get to a place where there's things that are in your sphere of control and things that are not. And the things that are your core competencies need to be in your sphere of control.
Yeah.
If they're not, it's really hard to be successful. In our case, we had a manufacturing partner that we placed an order for 6,000 pieces and they sent us 1,600 because we had a quality control problem and it wasn't our problem, but it became our problem when I couldn't deliver X number of units to a distribution partner.
Right. And I've seen it happen the other way. It was like, you're riding lightning, people want the product, you place an order, and let's say it's November, December, you got a big months coming up for Christmas sales or whatever, and then they never deliver, right? Like, and your entire year's banked on that
Absolutely
seasonality.
happens.
Then they deliver you 6,000 units in January, and you're like, what the hell am I going to do with these?
Absolutely.
Like, there's nowhere to move them, right?
Right. And it's you have to be able to handle the swings. And if you're not adequately capitalized, we had a product that was featured on the Today Show. We didn't know it was going to be featured on the Today Show until it
you don't
aired.
know sometimes, right? Yeah.
And we went from selling 25 units a day to we sold 6,000 units in 4 hours. We couldn't have product for 6 weeks because we didn't know. And that's one of those things where because we were thinly capitalized, we couldn't just rush order 20,000 more.
Right.
We had to wait until we got paid.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, supply chains don't react that way.
Exactly.
It's
That's
a
exactly
really, but it's a really important thing. Anyone who's getting in the product game to understand the balance of inventory to demand, and every time you look at inventory, it's cash.
Yes.
And I think that's a lot of times people don't realize that, right? Anytime you have inventory, you have working capital locked up.
Absolutely.
Right? And if you have bills due and you're sitting on a bunch of inventory for a different product.
Yeah, and the unit economics matter. Like you have, the margin on every unit has to be enough to cover, the COGS on X plus 1 unit. There's a lot of math that has to go into it in a physical products company.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the harder things I've ever tried to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and then that also your cost of acquisition for marketing, right?
Absolutely.
Like, is tied to each product.
Absolutely.
We just talked about this in class for those of you who are just there, just throwing it out there, right?
These things do
Customer
matter.
acquisition, they matter. Well, I know I want to make sure the students have a lot of time to ask questions too, but I have a couple of selfish ones because I'm running my own podcast here. So I often ask the Tim Ferriss question: favorite books or places you go for inspiration?
Favorite books?
I read a lot, so
I'll give you a few that are kind of across the spectrum.
Good.
If you're thinking about going to work for a big company, you're going to have to learn how to negotiate. There's a book, can't make this up, this is what it's called, How to Make $1,000 a Minute Negotiating Your Salary.
That's good.
It's about this thick, and it will teach you the math of how to ask for raises and bumps in base pay and what that means 5 years out. I actually read that when I got to, a friend of mine gave it to me when I was at City Search, one of the more valuable books I've read. There's another book called Lucky or Smart by Bo Peabody, and he was one of these early internet entrepreneurs. His company got bought, and in between when his company was acquired and when he could sell the stock, the value of his stock went from 5 million to like 150 million. And he was trying to sell it sooner.
Yeah.
And he was not smart. He got very lucky, and he talks a lot about being smart enough to know when you're getting lucky. So
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that.
I had a friend who went from $35 a share to $8 a share during his lockout period.
Yep,
He
yep.
is not lucky.
Yeah, that when I was at City Search, my stock options, my strike price was like 50 cents.
Yeah.
And we IPO'd, it opened at $80.
Yeah.
But by the time I could start selling, it was down to 40.
Yeah.
Turns out that's still a really good return
That's a good
on
return.
50 cents.
Yeah, but 80 cents is, or $80 would be
Yeah,
nicer.
way better.
Yeah.
So those are a couple. In terms of going and just doing the entrepreneurial thing, I'm a big fan of Guy Kawasaki's books. One of them in particular is called Rules for Revolutionaries. And it really talks about like, what are the things that you need to be prepared to do to be successful?
Yeah.
You've got to outthink, out hustle, and outsell everybody at what you're doing.
Yeah.
And he talks a lot about great products, great strategy, and great methodology. I'm a big fan.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Last question. If you're a student back in Michigan State, you can enroll again right now. What types of industries, topics, spaces are most intriguing to you right now? Even as like an investor or your next gig, I mean, who knows what the next thing is that Hal does? Like, what would intrigue you right now as a startup, from a startup perspective?
I still love physical products, even though it's hard.
Yeah.
And I still look at opportunities. I'm like, there ought to be something that does that. How hard would that be to do? So I still like great physical products.
Yeah.
They're hard to do. They're even harder to do well. But I think when you create a great physical product, whether it's an iPod or a great backpack, a great pair of headphones, if you create that user experience, there's something really satisfying about that.
Yeah.
So I still love physical products. I'm a little afraid of AI.
Afraid as in like
I've
don't
seen
know how to use it or
No. I'm
literally afraid.
I'm a fan of
Yeah.
of generative AI. I think it's hugely valuable. I have not used it to write a cover letter yet, but I can read and tell when it's been used sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, I can tell. I can tell.
But I've seen Terminator 2, and I know where this road leads. So I remember reading that ChatGPT 3. I was at a conference in Park City, and they brought in like the CEO of Jasper AI and all these guys to talk about where they were going. And he was talking about of his 800 employees, 600 of them are AI.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this does not end well.
Yeah.
It was just a really interesting wake-up moment. And I thought, and it turned out that same week, somebody had programmed ChatGPT and it had passed the USMLE, which is the boards to certify a doctor graduating from medical school. And it passed them in 4 hours.
Yeah.
Like the amount of power that we've created is really just, unprecedented.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see what guardrails we put on it
Yeah.
and also what really cool things we think of to do with it.
I mean, they've already found like 19 different antibiotic strains, right? Like
Yeah.
that's crazy.
It's insane.
Around.
It's
I mean,
insane.
I look at it as like, it was like the calculator, exponential calculator.
Yeah,
Like, I mean,
we are Prometheus and this is fire.
Yeah.
We're either going to burn it all down
we're going to build
or we're going to build something really awesome.
Yeah.
The choice is ours.
Yeah. So yeah, go do something there. Have fun.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure at all. Don't mess it up. Don't mess it up for Hal and I. We're going to be old soon.
Exactly.
So just remember us. All right. Cool. I'm done with my questions. So now we'll turn it over to the crowd. Yeah. What you got? Do you want mics? Chris got the mic. Hold on. It's because it records. Yeah.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Dylan. My question to you is, like, when dealing with bankruptcy, have you ever had to restructure a company and go about it that way instead of just filing? I forget. I believe it's Chapter 7 bankruptcy.
Yeah, Chapter 7 is when you're going to wind down. Chapter 11 is when there's going to be reorganization and restructuring. So I've been the guy that was hired to come in and do that. So I did some work for a venture fund in Utah. They had a couple portfolio companies that they were considering restructuring. And I was the guy that was hired to come in and do that. And it's a very painful process. I got to go to court and talk to a judge every week about all the things we were doing and having budgets reviewed and working with investors and telling people they weren't going to get their money, but here's what you're going to get some stock instead. So I've been part of both of those. They both suck. Neither one of them is very much fun. But it's sort of like, going to the dentist. Sometimes it's necessary to get where to deal with what you're dealing with. Yeah. So, but yeah, they're very different vehicles. So Chapter 11, the goal is to restructure the business so that it can go on. Chapter 7 is, and we're done here.
Yep. Sell the assets.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. No worries.
Hey, so I'm Percy. If you could come back to MSU and go back at entrepreneurship, would you go at it as a solo adventure or would you go at it as like a team like City?
I think the strongest entrepreneurial teams are at least teams of two. The trick is finding someone who has a different and complementary skill set. I've done a number of startups with 2 or 3 people now, and finding there's 3 important pieces to it. One is someone who has a different skill set than you, because like you don't need 2 heads of technology. 2, someone who's as good at their thing as you are at yours. A players hire A players. So that's the second one. And the third one is somebody that you would trust with your child. Because I tell everyone who's doing a startup, it's a lot like getting married. You know, you are hitched to this person for years. If you're successful, a lot of years. So you have to like, respect, but most importantly, trust this person with this thing that you're creating together, which is a lot like a child. You know, it's going to go on ideally and have a life of its own. The company will outlive you, right? If you're successful, that company, gets huge. So you've got to think about it from those 3 perspectives. Mm-hmm. Don't hire someone or bring in someone just like you as a founder, because you won't get a diversity of opinion, you won't get different perspectives, and you won't have all the skill sets that you need.
Yeah. I always tell student founders, be cautious of making the team too big too fast. Because it's really easy to be like, oh, I have a friend that does this, or my friend was with us when we were brainstorming that idea. That's anytime we see a team of founders, especially student founders, first-time founders, if I see more than 3 come through the door, I'm like, oh, this is not going to go well. One of you won't be here in 6 months. And we say that, they're like, oh, yeah, we will. Inevitably, we're having a therapy session 6 months out.
And by the way...
So be cautious about who you add and how you do it.
By the way, statistically, right, 80% of 2 founder companies, one of those founders leaves within 2 years. I mean, they just do. Because either the company outgrows them, or those 2 people have friction and they were great at the beginning, but they're not great operators together. They have different, styles. And that just happens. And you can't take it personally, even though it feels very personal. Yeah. Whichever side you're on.
Good question.
Other questions?
I got it, Chris. Okay. I can navigate too.
So my name is Lauren. What would you say to someone who has that entrepreneurial mindset, has that spark, wants to be their own CEO, but has absolutely no ideas, absolutely no way to go about it, wants to do it but doesn't know where to start?
So I think, the people that are the most successful entrepreneurs are people that have a passion for something. When I interview, whether it's student interns or people that I'm bringing into the company, one of the things I want to find out is what they're passionate about. And it doesn't have to be a work thing, right? Are they a musician? Are they a snowboarder? What are you passionate about? Because if you can be passionate about something, then you can turn that passion to what you're going to create. So I think the best entrepreneurs are people that are passionate about something, whether it doesn't matter if it's art or music or whatever. In terms of finding, it's about finding that pair, finding someone who has a set of skills that's different than yours, and then finding something you both want to do. And that takes time and patience, and like a marriage, don't rush into it, because you're going to be doing something together for months or years. But I think it's great if you already know that you don't want to work for somebody else. You got to find the thing that's going to inspire you. When I was doing Sorfeo, I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning with no alarm, and I was not a morning person. But I was so excited about the things that I needed to get done that day, and the things that we were going to do, because we built this incredible team, that I was out of bed at between 5 and 6 every morning with no alarm. And that's how I knew I was in the right place. So find something you get excited about.
Yeah, I think this goes back to your story earlier is don't hesitate to join a startup too. That's in a space you're really interested in. Go find those companies. They're always looking for interns. They're always looking for early hires. And you might not be the idea person, but you can join on in a space that's really exciting to you. I mean, you're doing your research on a topic that was related to what City Search was trying to get done, and then had your experience that really set you up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Lots of those small companies hiring.
Yeah.
Chris, you got one back there. Okay. Oh, Amon's got one. Okay. All right.
Well, firstly, thank you for taking the time to stopping by at MSU. I kind of wanted to ask if you had to go back and change something in your past, like what would that be? Like, is there something you were unsatisfied about, or is there a regret you had in the past?
Personal now. Now it's actual therapy. Hell, I'm sorry.
Wow. I think like a lot of things, I would have made decisions sooner when the outcome was obvious. I would have quit med school sooner. I don't know that I wouldn't have gone to med school because that ended up serving me a lot later. But I would have quit. I would have, had the guts to quit sooner. And, there's that expression, everything you ever wanted in life is on the other side of fear. And I was terrified to quit and specifically to tell my parents I was quitting. I would have made that change sooner and followed my passions sooner. And, I don't know that I would have ended up in a very different place. But there are definitely other cases like that. When I moved back to LA after being in San Francisco for a year, I quit the company that I was at after a year. I probably would have done that sooner. I think a lot of times when we realize something isn't working, we take too long to pull the ripcord. And I know that I've definitely been guilty of that. I've hung in with something longer than I should have after I knew where it was going and it wasn't going to serve me. And I think that's probably the single commonality. If I look across a bunch of different experiences, I would do things differently in that way. Not just one thing, but like when you know it's not working, you don't have to hit the wall at 60 miles an hour. You can slow down and get out and go do something else.
Hi, my name's Kate. I was wondering how you fill the information gaps of starting a new company. There's just so much to know about business law, structuring your financial, whatever it takes. How did you learn all of those different things? Because it's kind of impossible to know it all. Like, did you rely on mentors? Did you just read a lot of books?
All of the above. I was fortunate in a couple of respects. My father's a CPA, so the first time I was setting up a set of company books, I was like, Dad, I need help. And he's like, okay, let me tell you all the things not to do. So I was fortunate in that I had a really close mentor that could answer really dumb questions without making me feel stupid. I read a lot. I've said this before, there's an awesome book called The 10-Day MBA, because I didn't major in business. I knew enough to be dangerous, but pretty dangerous. And so a lot of it came from reading, but a lot of it came, again, kind of by luck. When I was at CitySearch, the vast majority of the members of the management team were all Ivy League MBAs and really good at that stuff. And I learned really quickly to keep my mouth shut and listen. And I would watch as these guys would orchestrate. And these guys who came here from McKinsey and their 2x2 matrix and how you lit, I learned all that stuff just by watching and taking ridiculous amounts of notes. And then, in my evenings, kind of digesting it and figuring out how I could apply that to what I was working on. And the experience of doing that for a couple of years and just kind of being a sponge, has returned dividends just for years.
Thank you. Can I ask a follow-up? More of like on the personal side, how do you manage stress and keep a bit of a work-life balance? Because when work is your life and you're so passionate about it, how do you kind of keep things calm?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I definitely wasn't good at that early in my career. When I was at CitySearch, like a light week was like 60 hours. Like if you left before 8 o'clock at night, you were a slacker. And if you weren't still at the office on Saturday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you were a slacker. I mean, we worked hard. We had guys sleeping under the desk when we were releasing code. And you can't run the engine that hard for a long time. That's one of the reasons I left when we went public. I left after 30 months, and I didn't work for 4 months. I just took time off. I traveled, I saw family, and reestablished relationships because I had been working that hard for 2.5 years. Fast forward 20 years, when we started Sorfeo, one of the things that my business partner Mark and I kind of set some ground rules when we started the company, because we both had kids, and we both wanted to have a life. And we said, okay, so here's the ground rules. We had a no asshole rule. So we wouldn't hire anybody in the company that we wouldn't want to have a beer with. It had to be a good person. And that meant in the team as well as our investor group. You didn't want anybody at the table that you didn't want at the table when you had to have a hard conversation. So that relieved a lot of stress, not working with people that you don't like. But the other part of it is you've got to set time for yourself to do things that you care about. So for me, what that meant was I got up between 5 and 6 every morning, and after I made sure my kid was ready to go to school, I went to the gym and I worked out for an hour every morning, 7 days a week, and that framed my day. It also got me to be a much healthier person. And this is at a time when COVID was happening and everyone was terrified for their health. I used it as an opportunity to really sort of reboot and focus on staying healthy, staying sharp, and getting things done that I needed to get done, both from a family perspective as well as from a work perspective. So I was working 12+ hour days some days, but I also didn't work on the weekends. I made sure I was going snowboarding, or I was doing the things that I care about, or playing guitar, and finding those things that give you your Zen place. I used to joke, I think we pitched Sorfeo 158 times when we raised our seed round, and we raised money from 15 investors. So we had a 90% failure rate. But just off camera in my home office is my Fender Stratocaster. And so in between meetings, I would just pick up the guitar for 20 minutes, because that helps me kind of reset. And if you don't do those kinds of things, your body will punish you later. So staying healthy in sort of mind, body, and spirit is how you're going to be successful and be able to work those 60, 70-hour weeks when you need to.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Hi, my name is Dylan. So I had a question regarding, so you talk about, working with other people, like startups, and you want people with different skill sets as you, but equally as proficient in that skill set. How, what have you found to be the best, networking to meet these people who have different skill sets with you? Because obviously you'll be working with people who have similar skill sets. So what have you found to be good for meeting other people, and what maybe have you found that hasn't been as good for meeting others?
Wow, that's a hard question. You have to be good at networking, and the best place to develop schmoozing skills is by taking theater classes, because and I know I'm saying this to theater people, but it's true. The ability to get up in front of an audience and talk comfortably will serve you in, hi, my name is, and I'm studying. All the networking that you do in your dorms, meeting other students in your classes, that's all just practice for when you have to go out and do it in the real world. And every business relationship that I have that's useful has come because it's from somebody I genuinely like and respect and care about. And those all start with building interpersonal relationships. So the single best thing I think you can get out of your experience in college is developing a good work ethic, being willing to work hard to be good at something, and then building a great network of people who think that you're good at that thing. And if they respect you for what you're good at, they'll want to work with you because they're good at something. And these things all kind of fit together like Lego blocks, and that's how you build something.
So I'll comment on this because it was really quiet when we came in here. Everyone in here is interested in entrepreneurship in some way, shape, or form. Next time you're in a setting like this, just look over the person next to you, be like, "Hi, my name is." Right?
Absolutely.
It's a weird thing. It's a challenging thing. I understand, but it's a great place. You never know who you might run into here who knows Hal or knows someone else who can make an intro, right? So yeah, take advantage of it while you're here.
Yeah.
On the topic of in-person versus asynchronous, when you went over to COVID digital, were you pitching those 158 times in person, like video to video, or was it more like calling and explaining it?
So we did 158 pitches for the company. One of them was in person. All the rest of them were on Zoom. And the only reason I did the one in person is it was someone who was in my angel investment network. He was a friend, and I went to his house. It's very different than it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, because I was raising money for another company, you flew to that city and you scheduled all your meetings back to back, and you drove office to office to office doing your pitches. And so you could do 3 or 4 in a day. That's all you could do. I had days that I did 10, and telling the same story, the same 20 minutes, 10 times in a day. You get pretty good at the script. But yeah, it's a very different world now. We raised $1.5 million in our seed round without having one in-person meeting. We raised $3 million in debt, including $1 million from Mark Cuban, 0 in-person meetings. We raised $1 million in our second seed round, 0 in-person meetings. And I never would have imagined that would be true 5 years ago. Yeah. Oh.
Kenny, we probably got time for like 2 more questions.
Hi, my name is Victoria. I'd like to ask, what's your advice when it comes to considering how you can scale your company or something that you're involved with? We're hearing a lot about the investors that you were involved in and kind of these individual plans that have taken place. But when you're in a new project, I mean, how do you create that level of scale or a plan to execute that?
So I think it starts with understanding if your idea has a narrow appeal or a broad appeal. I talk to a lot of student founders, and MSU is, like a lot of schools, everyone thinks it'd be really great if there was this thing in East Lansing. And this thing in East Lansing might not translate to Boston, might not translate to Dubai. So the question really becomes, how big a market is there for this thing? And what are the economics of that thing? If 100 people want it, if 1,000 people want it, if 1 million people want it. So scale ends up being a function of how big the market is and what the cost is to serve that market. If you can't get the unit economics right, it's gonna cost me X pennies for Y number of people to use this thing, and I can charge them Z dollars, that's a good thing. But you gotta figure out the unit, everything boils down to the unit economics. What does it cost for one person to use my thing, and how many people are there that can use my thing and have the utility that I want them to have with it, whether it's a widget, a piece of software, or an app.
All right, I have a ringer question up front.
Hi, Dad. But okay,
Hello, child.
this is a real question. So you were talking about how you were doing all of these Zoom pitches, but also about how all of your investors you want to make sure that you have kind of a personal relationship with. So how do you develop those personal relationships over Zoom with people who you've probably never met before?
Well, leave it to my daughter to ask like a really hard question. To be fair, I cheated. About 1/3 of the investors that we pitched were people that I already knew and had raised money from. So we stacked the deck a little bit. But another part of it is, one of the things that you get good at, a really good friend of mine and one of my investors in my last couple of companies, who's also one of my mentors, told me that to be a good tech CEO, you have to be an A+ level player at one of 3 things. You have to be an amazing technologist, like you gotta be able to write the code that writes the code. You've got to be an amazing salesperson, so you got to be able to sell sand in the Sahara, or you've got to be an amazing leader. Like your people have to be able to walk over hot coals just to keep up with you. And your superpower has to be one of those 3 things. And what I've learned is that I'm an A player in 2 areas. I'm an okay technologist. I hate writing code, but I can get it done. I really don't like it. But I'm a really good salesperson, and part of that just comes from doing it a lot. I've run sales teams, and then I'm pretty good at leading people across the desert. And so those 2 things combined, again, goes back to theater training, when you get used to delivering things in a way that are received the way you're trying to deliver them, you can be honest and you can be direct and you can be intentional, and the words will mean what you intend them to mean. And when you do that in a sales capacity, people buy, whether they're buying shares of your company or buying your product. So I guess I should have been a theater major, or at least a minor.
We got one more. Time for one more? All right.
Thank you. Thanks for the talk. Really appreciate your time. I had a question for you. So you have taken a lot of stress and taken a lot of risk during your entire entrepreneurial career. How do you gain that emotional intelligence to get out of these stresses, these pains? Because I feel that's something that we lack as students is getting out of that burden, getting out of that emotional strength is very hard to gain even for like people, right? So what is a good advice you'll get for gaining some emotional intelligence to deal with stress and burdens and just the hardships of life?
Wow. Okay.
It's a good meta way to
So
end
the
this.
secret of life, the universe, and everything is 42. No. Look, I think a lot of it comes down to figuring out how to deal with 2 competing things. One is what I refer to as analysis paralysis. It's really easy to get paralyzed when something looks insurmountable. And when you do that, you stop all forward motion and you sit and you stare at this thing and go, well, now what do I do? And one of the things that I've really appreciated, if you haven't read it, you should, Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs. Amazing. And he talks about one of Jobs' insights early on was that if you look around you, everything that you see around you that's ever been created was made by somebody who's no smarter than you. And so you look at these things and you go, wow, well, if somebody else could figure out how to make that, maybe this isn't so hard. And maybe if I don't try to do the whole thing, you know, you break things down into today problems and tomorrow problems. And what are the things that I can focus on and make progress on? You know, as humans, we want to be climbing steps. We don't want to just, you know, fly, because we know we can't do that. So how do we get to that higher altitude? By breaking things down into smaller hills we can climb. And so one of them is this analysis paralysis. The other piece is dealing with anxiety, right? It's sort of, you know, standing at the edge of the cliff, knowing you can't fly, but knowing you've got to get down there somehow. And figuring out how to stop being afraid of everything that's in front of you so that you can move one step and, you know, one rung down that ladder or one handhold down that cliff, knowing that I have the skill to get to this next thing. I know how to do this next thing. And managing anxiety is a lifelong, you know, task. I'm better at it than I was 5 years ago. I hopefully will be better at it 5 years from now. But I said it before, staying healthy, sleep 8 hours a night. I really, really, really mean that. And, you know, exercise, nutrition, and give yourself a break. Recognize that you don't have to write code 14 hours a day. It'll still get done, but you got to give your brain a break. You'll be way better at it if you take your mind off it.
It's a great way to end it. Yeah. Thanks, Hal. Really appreciate you joining us this evening. It was a ton of fun. Stick around for a couple Q&A if anyone wants to chat outside of this. So thanks for coming out to Innovate State, everybody. Go Green.
Go Green.